Hello, and thank you for joining us at Asian Paints India Design's Google Hangout session. Today we have with us Channa Daswatte, star architect from Sri Lanka, and he's going to talk to us about the business of building. Channa, let's start. So, would you talk to us about the importance of having a mentor and the impact it has had on your life?
I mean, we're always influenced by what's happened before us. I mean, there's very little chance of us not to ignore, for us ignoring the past. So I think in my life, certainly, having someone like Jeffrey Bauer, who was my mentor, and a couple of other senior architects in Sri Lanka as my mentors, have had a tremendous influence. It's given me the confidence to sort of feel I can do what I really want to do, and it also gives you a platform from which you can then begin to explore yourself, because and a mentor particularly with a specific point of view. I mean, there's no point having a mentor who doesn't have a point of view. I suppose mentor means someone who has a very clear point of view, and then you have something to interact with and interact against or with. So I think having a mentor, it gives you a leg up, as it were, in what we were doing. And I think I was very privileged to have the mentor I had. And he's had a tremendous influence on my life, not simply because I continue to do the kind of work those mentors did, but at least I had a base from which to take off. And I think that was very important in my life.
Okay, Channa, so which of your past projects best describes your design ambition?
I think, as you would see perhaps even in my presentation later this afternoon, it's probably my own house, because in a sense, uh, I have I have probably been my best client in the sense that I could just do what I want to do with myself. It also integrates lots of ideas. I mean, my ideas of how people should live, my ideas of sustainability, my ideas of reuse of materials, and so on. All of that is brought together in my own house. And I think, and over the last 8 or 9 years I've been living in it, I've added to it. I've become its kind of user rather than its architect, and begun to change it in ways that are sometimes positive, maybe sometimes not so positive. But it's also sort of managed to sustain its original form and shape and still have its own character. And in fact, it's got added to its character for what I've done to it. So in a sense, my own house becomes like an experiment
It does.
for everything that I do.
And everything that you believe in.
And everything I believe in, because often other projects you do and you leave, and then other people do these things to it, and of course if they can sustain themselves and still stand up to what you originally believed in, great. And I think I have quite a few pieces of architecture like that. But your own house sometimes manages to stand the test of time much longer, and that I think is quite important in architecture.
Channa, so how has the global slowdown affected the field of architecture in countries like India and Sri Lanka?
I think India and Sri Lanka particularly, because for years we had this sort of war going on, and since 2009, when the war ended, there has been a resurgence of work. I mean, in Sri Lanka particularly, we are kind of catching up with 30 years of lost development, for whatever reason. I mean, we had reasons for the war. There was unfairness and so on. So there was, whether it was good or bad is another argument. But since it ended, there's been a resurgence, and we're trying to catch up. So in Sri Lanka, I think we've been not so badly off. And I must also say, I do work in India. Although the initial 2008 slowdown did affect some of the work that I was doing here, it seems to have somehow picked up. And I think India's got this incredible potential. I mean, just its people, so many people wanting to travel, wanting to do things. And that's really going to be the generator of the future of building and architecture in this part of the world. I mean, our populations, as they begin to demand better, more beautiful places, we are going to have a lot of work. And I think if we are in the right place at the right time, we should be perfectly all right. I'm very hopeful.
And as a senior architect, how important is it to keep up with technological
I like
advances.
you using senior architect. It's the first time ever anyone's called me senior. I suppose it's the gray hairs.
No.
But yes, I think keeping up with technology is very important, at least to know what you shouldn't be doing. Often, technology, like we were just listening to 3D printing and you think, oh my God, 3D printing, is it going to replace things? It's important to know what that technology can and can't do. And I do try to keep in touch with them. But whether I use it or not, if someone asks me why don't you use more contemporary technology in your work, I think it's mostly dependent on economies. I mean, whether you can actually use some of these technologies to best effect for what you want to do, I think is quite important. And understanding that is quite important. So I try to keep up with what's going on, even if I might not use them directly in my buildings. I think it's very important, at least if it is to know what not to do.
Yeah.
Even if even it's not so much about knowing what to do with it, but knowing what not to
What
do
not
with
to
it.
do with it, yeah. So with glass and steel facades dominating our skylines, how do you perceive skylines in India and Sri Lanka, say 50, 20 years down the line?
Yes, I mean, glass and steel is a very, very easy sort of facade wrap up. You just build up a whole series of spaces. You need to enclose it, and increasingly people want sort of conditioned environments to work for their profitability and also profitability of labor. People work well in better sort of temperatures. For instance, I'm not working well in this cold, but but if it was a Singapore idea. I mean, Singapore saying, look, if I keep people at a particular temperature, everyone's going to be working harder and producing more. So you do this sort of business of creating the spaces you require, and then wrap it up with the easiest possible thing, which is sheets of glass. Now, while the skylines are affected by heights of buildings, that's fine. But I think architects will begin to think a little bit more about whether they should just put a sheet of glass outside as a cover, or whether that skin of the building is going to be much more interactive with the environment in which it is. And I'm hoping that will happen. So for instance, although there are lots of tall buildings in New York, you can look at something like the Chrysler building, or if you look at something like the Seagram building, you see that each architect responded to the materials they were using in different ways to give each building character. And one's hoping that that'll happen in our cities as well. But as an initial phase, yes, I think it's just going to be sheets of glass, completely characterless buildings.
Once
But
we're tired of those blocks,
and
I
also
guess.
once we become a little bit more educated about them, I think when people begin demanding that really we are not interested in this kind of thing, you need to respond to the environment in which you are. You're going to have to cut down on air conditioning costs. You need to start cutting down sunshine on the glass. Okay, technologies will help at first, so there'll be the skins and the various films that will be put on the glass and so on. But there'll be other things that you might be able to do, and that'll begin to give character to our buildings. Perhaps, I mean, I like tall, high cities. I mean, New York is fantastic because you don't have to walk too much. You go up an elevator, come down to the street, and 2 blocks away you have a fantastic restaurant. You go back to work. So I think tall cities, high cities are good, and great dense cities are very good. But I just hope that the buildings become a little bit more characterful.
Correct. And Channa, what do you think is the most widespread misunderstanding about architects?
I think a lot of clients, for instance, think that architects tend to be in the air, and which leads to sort of too much money being spent on design and so on. I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding. And if you're a good architect, particularly, you start with whether something is affordable. I think architecture is business to a great extent, unless you're building a monument to someone's ego or somebody's sort of personal house. If you're actually working within a community, it's important that you know that it's business, that it must be affordable, it must be within the economies of scale of the place you're building, and respond to all those other things. And I think most good architects do. It is a bit of a misunderstanding that we are arty and we sort of flighty and we don't really think about what costs are and what money is. We are constantly thinking about it because if not, you don't get on with the person who's commissioning you to do it. They're not interested in it. And I find that my relationships with clients are best when I have also been thinking of ways in which economies are worked out and buildings work properly to fulfill their function.
So, Channa, we're getting a few questions from Twitter right now.
Okay.
So, people want to know what's the value of design to businesses today?
I think it design is about business today because there's so many things in the market, which if you simply look at a pencil as a pencil as a pencil, it's a little instrument to write with, and all you need to do is put a piece of lead into a piece of wood. Now beyond that, it is design that will make it desirable, and in this world of commerce, desire it's fed by desire. Right? It's the very antithesis, for instance, of say what the Buddha said or something like that. It's not about desire, but of the contemporary world, it's the driving force, absolutely. And so how do you make that pencil more appealing? And that is absolutely design. So beyond the basic function of any object that we put on the market, it's design that makes it more desirable or otherwise. Right? Except of course if you sort of make it out of gold, or make it out of silver or some material thing. But if you don't, if you have the same materials that you have the original basic pencil made of, it's a designer who can make it desirable. And I think therefore design is the very essence of business today. That's what gives you that competitive edge, and I think that's very, very important. I think there was a very simple comment made by I think Mr. Sunil Shetty, who kind of said about the plastic flowered ceiling that's in the room that we are making the presentation. That this man's got a huge amount of work bookings for this hall simply by the ceiling. Obviously, someone designed it. And a couple of years ago, I had an award ceremony, the Jeffrey Bauer Awards, which we have in Sri Lanka every 3 years. And we held it in an old warehouse that belonged to a friend of mine. And Tasneem kind of said, "Oh, Channa, this is..." I said, "Just give it to me." And all I did was to paint the floor in black and white squares. And from that moment on, she had so much bookings on that hall for all the cool events in town. And that was design. Just simply thinking about, okay, what's lacking here is a great floor, and that's it. And that's design. So I think yes, I mean, design is key really to contemporary business.
Thank you. And how essential is design to profitability of a resort and tourism destination?
It's sort of related, that question, isn't it? Because a tourism destination is two things. I mean, one is you want to go to a different location in which you want to sort of live and enjoy. So for instance, someone in a cold climate might come to Sri Lanka or India to spend their winters. Now that's one reason for travel. Of course, you can go and stay in a million different places now. Again, there is an edge which one resort will have over another. And often I find that that's design. And talking to you speak to developers who come to us for designs, they are talking about, look, what would make this place more attractive than my neighbor. And I think there's a very, very important design that goes into resorts today. People are not coming just simply to stay in the old place, but they're coming for a complete experience. And that experience can be designed. An experience beyond sitting in the sun or beyond having a glass of wine. What are you looking at while you're having your glass of wine? What are you looking through? And what are you sitting on? And so on. All that becomes quite important. So design is a key element of tourism and resort design.
Thank you so much, Channa. It was lovely speaking to you.
My pleasure.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Right.